acid option in the wine world. Instead of buying acid blend, just buy malic and tartaric acid. You could buy citric acid also on their own, and then just play with different ratios. But if I was doing a Pymen and adding an acid addition, I would add majority tartaric.
Yeah, and I would as well, and I have done that because that's what's in grapes. So it's going to be more. It's going to taste more natural.
You could actually add tartaric acid to a dry traditional mead, and it will taste like a grape wine, like a white wine. That's how much it's going to influence the flavor. So if you're going to do that and try to match like a specific acidity that you don't get naturally from fermentation, then that's one option if you really, really want to dial it in.
Okay. Now, what if they don't have, for whatever reason, don't have access to grape skins, so they can only get juice from whatever resource? Do you what are your thoughts about bringing in basically tannin to a skinless pyment that you would like to tannin up? Do you feel like you can get a natural feeling tannin character using powdered tannin, or?
I think so. Yeah, I use powdered tannin on one specific recipe that we have, which coincidentally is not a pyment, but yeah, no, you could. Yeah, the powdered tannin works pretty well in my opinion. And but other ways you could get tannin is from oak. Fermented on oak if that's going to suit that specific grape varietal for that pyment. Fermented on oak or aged on oak or both. Yeah, it kind of really depends. You're not going to get that tannin content that you would get from a traditional grape wine if you're only using the juice. You're just not going to get the same amount of tannin. But you can always supplement that very easily.
Okay.
There's some other things you can use too. OptiRed, if anyone's heard of that, I think Scott Labs makes that.
Yeah, okay. Scott Labs, yeah.
And that will help with color retention in reds, but it does also help bind to the tannins, and is it the anthocyanins and some other things that help provide texture. So it helps bind to those and keep them in the wine rather than precipitating out.
Okay.
So those now I say these things. Anybody who's going to try to do this, definitely research the product, understand what it's for, because there's like Mega Purple and there's all kinds of other stuff you can buy, but you really need to understand what it's going to do and why it works the way it does, because you just don't want to throw it in there, because you got to know how much you need to put in there and what you're trying to do. But there are things you can do to help manage mouthfeel texture issues if you don't have a complete scenario including grape skins.
Yeah. And harking back to Sergio's earlier comment about acids, and then bringing in Jason. Sorry, I was just talking to Tony on the live feed. Jason, with what you were saying about know what you're adding. I see so many people going, so I threw acid blend, and it's like, why? Why did you throw acid blend in there? Did it need acid blend? And they're like, what do you mean? The recipe said acid blend. Yes, but did it need acid blend? And they don't.
But the recipe said.
Yeah, but the recipe
that's the problem is people aren't really educated to figure out the old recipes that use acid blend, because we didn't know honey had acid in it on its own.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the newer recipes that actually account for that. So.
A lot of fruit wine recipes have acid.
Well, yeah, because a lot of the basic idea behind a lot of the fruit wine recipes is that you're trying to mimic everything a grape has. You want the same amount of sugar, you want the same amount of tannin, you want the same amount of acidity, because that's what all the research has been done on. And if it tastes good for grapes, it'll taste good for everything else, and that's why you want to do that. But honey's a different animal.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's just all about experimentation. I mean, I'm always open, obviously, to answer questions, so I'll preface this by saying that. But at the end of the day, you just got to try it out yourself.
You just roped yourself into like multiple shows. Just hope you know that.
It's just one of those things where it's like, well, nobody taught me how to do, how to make a Pymen or a Melomel or a dry traditional. It's just getting up and doing it and trying it and then try again. That's actually kind of one of the things I actually love
knowing
about
that
session.
Sometimes they're going to suck,
Yeah, it's going to happen. My first 4 batches of mead ever went down the drain. I tried to save them, but they were just goners. And, and I told that to people who come into the meadery and say, oh, yeah, I started making mead and this and that. Your stuff is way better. And I'm like, well, if you just started, trust me, my first 4 batches went down the drain. So don't give up just yet. And, it's just a matter of experimentation. It's, with session meads, though, I actually got really inspired on Sunday, or Saturday, rather. I was a guest speaker at the New York City Fermentation Festival. And I was presenting about mead making. And a good friend of mine, Mary Izette, who wrote the book Speed Brewing. I don't know if you guys have heard of that.
I've heard of
it.
It
is an amazing, amazing book. Her and her husband, Chris Kuzmi, these guys were meant to be. Their whole entire life is revolved around home brewing. And they ferment everything you can think of. So she actually had a booth there, and I hadn't seen her in quite some time, and she was pouring what she calls her mini meads, her 2.5% alcohol session meads.
Huh.
Now, when you think of that low of alcohol, especially for a mead, the first thing that I would think of is it's going to be like flavored seltzer water
like
kind of
Kool-Aid,
a thing,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the lower alcohol means for a mead means the more water means less flavor.
Yeah.
But when I tasted her meads at 2.5% alcohol, I was amazed at how much flavor she was able to impart into these meads, and it honestly totally inspired me. On Monday, first thing I did, went to Trader Joe's, went to Whole Foods, picked up some ingredients, and I got a good 5 or 6 1-gallon batches going of like super off the wall, low alcohol session mead recipes. And the coolest part about it is, tying this back into what I was saying as far as experimenting is, I literally made 6 recipe, flavor combinations as far as recipes that I never even thought of up until Monday when I was walking through the aisles. And I'm staring at these 1-gallon jugs on the bar in my tasting room today, and I'm just looking at them like, are they ready yet? Are they ready yet? With session meads, the coolest part about it is they will be ready really soon.
Yeah.
So that's a really cool way of experimenting. If I don't know if it'll really translate. If you want to make an experiment with different, percentages of fruit character, or in this case, like we were talking about today, a pyment, grape character or component. Try on the session mead line. Maybe something would kind of like factor in and like scale up to a standard strength mead in that case. But you might be able to get a good idea of how it'll taste doing a session mead that might be ready in 4 or 5 days. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's what people don't realize.
2.5 or 3%. Yeah, that's like 5 days. That's done and ready to drink. Don't even filter it. Just pour it in a glass and enjoy it.
And drink it.
Yeah. I know. You know what's funny? I
clear up fast too.
Yeah, I had 0 nutrients. I sprinkled the fucking yeast on top of it. I didn't even bother. I'm like, nah.
Fucking pasta people just had heart attacks. They're like,
I know.
holy crap.
Like the entire mead world just convulsed when you said that.
Trust me, the yeast does not need any nutrients to ferment.
I feel a
2.5%
profound
alcohol.
disturbance in the force.
When I've done low alcohol ones too.
Obi-Wan Kenobi,
Yeah, I've actually forgotten to do the nutrients in a couple of my low alcohol meads, and by the time I remembered, they were already done. Like they just don't need it.
Oh yeah.
I don't bother when I'm doing ciders either.
I made amazing meads for like 12 years and never added a single nutrient other than throwing some yeast nutrient in right when I pitched the yeast. Yeast nutrient, put the airlock on it and forget about it. For ages, and some of them were really, really good. Some of them not so much, but there was a lot of really good meads in there. I pretty much manage most of my meads now, but staggered nutrient additions are kind of all the rage, and they do work, no question about it. And I went from meads that took longer to meads that were drinkable way quicker by doing a managed ferment. But yeah, they do
make all the difference in a standard strength, but when you're talking to that low alcohol, the yeast doesn't need as much help, which at least Taza does account for. The lower alcohol you go, the way, way less nutrients you actually need to add, which is a cool thing. But that's part of the tailored, component of Taza. But with this, I'm literally just for these experimentals, literally just to experiment with flavor combinations. 2.5-3% alcohol. The yeast is not going to need that much help to ferment that.
No, that's like a starter.
Yeah,
I mean, it'll
pretty much. Yeah, it's like a starter.
Listen, most of my batches at super high gravities are at 3% before I even add my second nutrient addition. You know what I mean?
I can't help but wonder if you were like to do a whole line of mini meads and market them for, like one drink wonders. Are you a lightweight drinker? Do you really want to be able to keep up with your friends who can slam back an entire 750 in one evening and still walk away? Then I have the mead for you.
Introducing mini meads.
Mini meads, yeah. Now, there's like a whole bunch of mead makers out there going, scribble, 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 scribble. What a great idea. Scribble, 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 scribble. Yeah, we could do scribble, scribble,
Sergio, does that make you Dr. Evil?
I think it does, yeah. I think it really does. Yeah, mini meads. That was and believe it or not, that was my daughter's nickname growing up. All my friends and I did living history for pretty much from the time she was like 4. And they all called her Mini Mead because, of course, every time we'd have an event, I'd bring a case of mead. And when the show was over and we were done working and got back into our real clothes, we'd all sit around and they go, "So, Vicky, what'd you bring? And have Mini Mead bring it to me." So it was, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm super excited to see how these come out. I'm really hoping they're done like tomorrow.
Yeah. Standing over there and watching them, that whole watch pot doesn't boil thing, Sergio. Just saying.
Yeah. No, I even threw them in front of the heater for a little while today just to see
what they would do. Yeah, and they start bubbling and convulsing and.
Yeah.
Sounds like a kid on
blowing
Christmas.
off the airlock.
No, I'm serious. Even our large batches, 14% alcohol stuff. I've heard Fairbrother say it. I've heard Ken Schramm say it. It's totally true. There's nothing like standing over the top of an open tank and just watching something that's at 62 degrees looking like it's boiling, and just all that turbulence that the yeast. It's mesmerizing. Even on small scale, it's if you can see that active fermentation. I literally spent a good 6 or 7 minutes just staring at 1 gallon jugs.
So it's
like a lava lamp, right?
So you have meditation, is that what you're saying?
Meditation.
Oh, God.
Meditation.
Sorry. I am, after all, at my most basic level, a smartass, so,
So you want to hear some of these recipes I put together, experimentals?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, hold on, let me get a pen.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's just say, who's taking, AJ, you taking notes?
Of course I am.
Oh, good. Okay.
All right. Cut the live feed and knock Jason off real quick. Hold on.
We're recording this,
right?
All right,
I'm just going to go up on Hootsuite here and let everybody know that secrets are being...
Yeah, so we have a strawberry rooibos tea mead going. Rooibos tea is like naturally decaffeinated, red tea basically from South Africa.
Yeah, rooibos is great stuff, and it's got a natural sweetness to it that you don't even need to put sugar in it when you make the tea.
Exactly, yes. And so I got a strawberry rooibos tea going. I have another one that is a tea from the leaves of black currants. So a black currant tea mead, basically. We have a blueberry hibiscus, which isn't too out there, that I'm sure has been done before. But we also have one that I found this a combination. It's basically hibiscus, orange peel, dried cranberry, and something else. I forgot what the hell it was in there. But I mean, it smells like so tropical. It's something I found on spicejungle.com called passionberry tea.
Oh.
It is.
Now I'm going to have to go to spicejungle.com.
Amazing. It smells amazing. And then the last one, I believe, was a juniper berry mead.
Oh, juniper berries are nice.
It smells legit, straight up just like gin.
Oh, yeah.
I'm so looking forward to that one, actually.
There was a guy who did, and you might find this useful, there was a meadery that is sadly no longer open. It was in Western Virginia years and years ago. It's called Smokehouse. And he did a juniper berry mead with spruce tips in it.
Okay.
And it was stunning. just stunning. It had all that tartness that you get from the juniper berries, and then the spruce tips added this sort of piney sweet note to it. It was just every time I could, and you couldn't get a